Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Philip Bywaters. This evening's last post ceremony commemorates the 78th anniversary of the victory in Europe following the Second World War. Tonight, we will hear the story of Pilot Officer Edward George Wicky, who lost his life in the skies over England in February 1945. We warmly welcome the delegation representing the New Zealand Defence Force Command and Staff College's Advanced Command and Staff Course. Mr John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch, and Air Commodore Peter McDermott, Vice President of the Air Force Association. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. As you have seen, the Guard has now dismounted the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. Ladies and gentlemen, if able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this place would be somewhere where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Edward George Wicky. Edward Wicky was born on the 28th of September 1922 in Bellingen, New South Wales. His father, also Edward, had emigrated to Australia from Switzerland in 1914, settling in Sydney. There, he married Rita Hughes in 1920 before they moved to Bellingen on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Young Edward was born 2 years later, followed by two sisters. Edward spent his boyhood days in Leeton, New South Wales, where he attended intermediate high school and was prominent in all the sports, especially tennis and swimming. Later, the family moved to Manly in Sydney, where Edward got a job as a clerk at the head office of the Bank of New South Wales. When war broke out in September 1939, Edward was not yet 18, so his enlistment was delayed until the 23rd of May 1942, when he joined the Royal Australian Air Force in Sydney. Designated aircrew, Edward trained in Australia at a number of locations around the country before being sent to Canada at the beginning of 1943 for further training under the Empire Air Training Scheme. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners, and flight engineers who, throughout the course of the war, joined Royal Air Force squadrons or Australian squadrons based in Britain. In Canada, Edward gained his pilot's flying badge on the 25th of June 1943. Arriving in the United Kingdom in November 1943, further operational training followed. On the 2nd of July 1944, he was posted to number 464 Squadron RAAF. In September, he was discharged from the RAAF upon being granted a commission as pilot officer in the RAF. Wicky had joined the squadron flying de Havilland Mosquito aircraft during its busiest time of the war, around D-Day. He and his navigator, Oswald Mountford, with whom Edward had teamed up in Canada, racked up numerous missions, attacking a variety of enemy targets in France and Holland. By early 1945, the war seemed in its final phase as Allied forces closed in on Germany, but flying operations continued apace. On the night of 3rd of February 1945, Wicky and Mountford took off from the base on Thorney Island, east of Portsmouth. After successfully attacking enemy installations in Holland, they were returning to base in bad weather with low cloud around 2 a.m. As they neared the airfield, the village of Horndine loomed large in the windscreen. Taking immediate evasive action to avoid crashing into the houses, Wicky tried to pull up. Clipping the parish hall and a house on some high ground, the Mosquito crashed outside Horndine with a loud bang. No civilians were hurt, but Wicky and Mountford were dead. They had bailed out at the last moment and had struck trees before the parachutes could properly open. Wing Commander Vincent, writing to Wicky's mother, said that Edward threw himself wholeheartedly into his work, and his record of achievement was crowned by the award of the Distinguished Flying Cross. His cheerful and friendly personality will long be remembered by his brother officers, who offer you their deepest sympathy in your loss. Edward Wicky was 22 years old. He and Mountford were buried at Brookwood Military Cemetery in Surrey. In 2019, a local group erected a memorial to the two men near the crash site. The group was led by some who had been billeted at Horndine in 1945 and remembered the event. Wicky is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Pilot Officer Edward George Wicky, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Colourful honoring! Freeze!
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.